Hello, Mr. Gheorghiu.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Yourself?
Well, trying
I
to
heard
get
we'll
better.
have some beautiful games today.
Hopefully.
Some nice sacrifices.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. You'll
Okay.
see. You'll
Let's
see.
start. So the first game is against Toth Bela.
Yeah,
Is that
against
correct?
Toth Bela, he was a Hungarian master who, actually he played for Switzerland in that period. He lived in Switzerland for a long period. And we had a very interesting game because it was very tactical. We'll see. The move order will be very interesting. We start like a Benoni here. I'm playing with black, and after d5, g6, knight c3, d6, e4, bishop g7, knight f3, castle, h3. And now black can play a lot of moves here, but a6 is one of them, one of the best. And the alternative, the main alternative is e6, which leads to the normal Benoni. After a6, black tries, if possible, to play a kind of Bank of Volga gambit. If white agrees to let you do this, I mean, if white doesn't play a4 to block the square b5, a4 is the main alternative to block this. If he plays something else, bishop e2 or bishop d3, we have a normal position from this kind of gambit, Volga.
So basically giving up a pawn here to
giving up for a strong initiative with black. You have a very good game for the pawn. I mean, you sacrifice the pawn, but afterwards you can play a lot of interesting moves, and you have a very good counterplay with black.
Banco Gambit?
Banco Gambit, yes.
But why, this is the reason why a6 is a good move?
A6, why? Because if you play immediately b5, you can play also b5 immediately. But after b5, you sacrifice the pawn, and afterwards white can play the same position with a tempo more. I mean, an extra tempo for white, you see. So now... of course, he could play a4, but after bishop d3, now black can do this, this idea,
Yes.
So I sacrificed the pawn, and he took, and now he took with the knight. It's the only good move. Instead of knight takes b5, if he takes with the bishop, after knight takes e4, black is already better. Now he must take in e4, of course, now. And now after queen a5 check, black has already very strong initiative. Black recaptures the pawn, and he's clearly better, yes. So he takes with the knight, and now it's a big mistake to take immediately in e4 because you lose a piece. I mean, he comes back with the knight in c3, and you are piece down,
Yes.
So, of course, knight a6, you have already a good plan for the pawn. I mean, knight a6, knight goes back to c3, knight b4, okay? So now bishop e2, he has to retreat the bishop somehow, because after castle he was losing the exchange, if castle was a big mistake, because you could take in d3, takes, and bishop a6, and black is winning already.
So after castle?
Castle is a big mistake. Now you take in d3, he takes in d3, and bishop a6, and white is lost probably.
Okay.
He loses the exchange.
Yes.
So, of course, he played well, bishop e2, bishop e2. So now queen a5, castle, and bishop a6. Well, this is the first part of the game is finished. Now black has a good game for the pawn, has some tactical chances, and white has to play very precisely. After rook e1, rook fb8, and now he played bishop f4. Now I took in e2.
So the
He
idea...
took with the rook. The idea was, maybe even trade queens. If you trade queens after queen a2, queen takes e2, for instance, black has a good game even if he plays in this position queen a6. It's okay for black, You accept to trade queens, because now if white takes in a6, you take with the rook, and you are threatening to come with this knight from b4 in d3 or in c2. and the position is already very good for black here. Very good counterplay for black. So now he took with the rook, trying to put the rook in d2 to protect twice the square d3. I mean, he has still a pawn. I mean, he tries to keep the pawn and show that with the pawn up, he has good chances to defend. Another plan was to play earlier the idea with knight f3 to d2, trying to put the knight in c4, you see, later on. It was a little bit different, but it was some other plan. I mean, a little bit different from our game. The only problem was that I knew already very well the position because I played a few years before at the Olympic Games, the Olympiad in Buenos Aires in '78. I played the same position, the same plan with black against a strong Chinese grandmaster, and I won the game. But I knew very well the idea, what to play. It was my game. Of course, I knew very well what happened there.
You played with black as well?
I played with black also. And therefore, we had this very important difference. I had already 2-3 minutes on my clock. I mean, I played very quickly the opening. And my opponent thought for about an hour. I mean, so he had already some problems because he didn't have much time left in this game. Yeah. So, okay, the position is still balanced. It's not winning for black, but it's a little bit unpleasant for white because he is under pressure, I mean, he is pawn up, but he's a little bit under pressure. And we will see the difference, what happens next. Yeah. So after queen a6, now black was threatening already knight d3. If he can play knight d3, he has a very strong initiative, If he doesn't play rook d2, I mean. Yeah. So now after rook d2, queen c4, we have this position, and white has to defend very well. But what to do if he plays immediately rook c1? I mean, he has to defend in a2 and in e4. Black wants to take already in e4. If he takes in e4, the position is almost winning for black, I mean, if he plays now, for instance, queen e2, let's say now, queen e2, you can trade the queen in e2, and if he takes, for instance, with the rook, normal, you can play knight d3, and black again has a very strong initiative. Very unpleasant position for white. Because you're threatening in f4 and in b2. Probably the only good move is to play bishop back to c1. And it's unpleasant pressure, for white, And you can see very active for black. I mean, every piece plays very well, and white is already in very, very unpleasant defensive here, So, okay, he didn't play queen e2. He had to choose the plan, and he played b3, threatening to win the queen now if you take in c3. The very interesting moment was that he played b3 and he proposed draw here. I mean, trying to win the queen. And black accepted the challenge, and I took in c3, sacrificing the queen. But it's forced, but it's very good for black,
So you actually accepted to sacrifice the queen?
Yeah, that was the idea, You sacrifice now the queen. I mean, you take in c3, and everything is forced. Queen takes c3, and rook c1. And now you lose the queen, forced, Rook c1. Now what to do? You lose the queen, but you have a very, very strong initiative. Knight takes e4. Knight takes e4. E4.
Knight takes
e4. The other knight, no.
Sorry, yes.
The other knight takes in e4. Okay, now you give the queen. He's forced to take the queen, because otherwise the queen goes back to f6 and you can resign with white, So now you have to take the queen. And everything is more or less forced, because all the black pieces are very well coordinated, and you have a fantastic initiative with black, for the queen. Finally, at the end, white has still the queen on board, but has no moves. It's almost zugzwang everywhere, So rook takes, knight takes, queen e1, and you take the second pawn in d5. Now you look the result. We gave the queen for some pieces, but the compensation is very, very strong, and white has a very, very unpleasant position here. I mean, the bishop is attacked, has to go back, and he loses the other pawn in a2 by force. Bishop g5 is probably the only move, I mean, to try to do something with the bishop. Yeah. Okay, so e6, quietly. Now we see the result. Zugzwang for white, has no moves. Now, he couldn't protect twice the pawn from a2. If he loses the pawn in a2, the position is finished for white, you know. So, okay, rook c2 is probably the only move again. Yeah. So now we take the pawn. So we see the result. White has no plan at all, has to wait. The queen doesn't do anything, I mean, a spectator from this position. And black plays almost alone here, you see. Every piece, you know, threatens something, you know. The rook, the queen, the center is very strong for black. The position is completely winning for black. So now we have to realize the advantage, you see. So, okay.
Queen so extra queen, but...
yeah, but it has no moves, we'll see, yeah.
Not much to do.
I mean, my opponent was strong enough. He was a very good international master, but you have to find the plan. Even if you are very strong grandmaster, probably you lose such a position with white because you don't have any play. You are almost, you know, in Zugzwang with every piece. So queen e2, knights back to c3, queen c4, now rook b4. Now the queen has to go back. Again, forced, yeah. Queen d3, he lost the last pawn now. Okay, so complete domination for black, you know. I mean, black plays alone. Yeah. Okay, rook a3, queen f3. And now we have to move again, trying to get the knight in d4. If we arrive with the knight in d4, white has no plan at all. I mean, it's complete defense without any hope to save the game. You know? So queen e4, knight d4, rook c1, and now we attack the bishop. So what to do here with white? The only move, bishop h4, of course. So now knight f4, he can't take the knight in f4 because he loses the queen, knight e2 check.
Yes.
So if he doesn't have time to do this, it's no game at all afterwards.
What else
so
to
after rook e1, g5, yes, bishop g3, and now we attack again the queen, d5. And here, I think white resigned in this position.
Resigned,
yeah,
yes.
He resigned because everything is forced. He has to play queen b1, it's the only move. You see?
Yeah.
The white queen has only one move, queen a1, b1, pardon. And now after rook a1, he has to give the queen because otherwise he loses the rook for nothing, you see.
Yeah.
You have to take in a1, rook takes, and knight e2 check, and he loses the rook. And now, of course, therefore he resigned. Well, very logical, but anyway, beauty prize, you know, for this game. And it was like a positional lesson. I mean, normal, you know, sacrifice. I mean, black sacrificed the queen for some pieces, but it was correct. Very good plan. And afterwards, the game was very clear.
One way.
One way, yes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
Very important theoretical, the game, you see, because everything was nice
for this gambit.
For this gambit, yes. Well, therefore, in this gambit, you can have a lot of, you know, games like this. You know, you give a pawn, you have very good counterplay with black, and you have very strong initiative, and therefore it's very unpleasant for your opponent, you know, to find a plan. You see, that is the idea. You free yourself by giving a pawn, and for this pawn you have something, you know, in the future, you know. A little bit more, and maybe decisive, like in our game.
You gave a pawn and a queen.
Well, the queen later on, yes, of course.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Gheorghiu.
Yeah, beautiful game, anyway.